What if the smartest people in the room are not the best investors? Our guest today has spent 30 years in managing assets, and he'll tell you flat out right that it's not IQ but EQ. Welcome to the JHS Classic Leadership Series, where we dive deep into the strategic minds of visionary leaders. I am your host, Disha Shah, and today I have the privilege of speaking to Mr. Anthony Heredia, Managing Director and CEO of Mahindra Manulife Asset Management. He isn't your typical guest from investment industry. Yes, he spent 30 years managing assets and leading giants from Morgan Stanley to HSBC. And today he runs an organization which has grown five-folds in just 4 years. That's Anthony Heredia for you. Anthony believes that in both investment and leadership, emotional wisdom triumphs over raw intelligence. That's a contrarian view. We'll unpack more into it and many more. From how he builds high-performance teams and navigates through crisis to what does the future of investment look like. Expect insights into strategic decision-making, wealth creation philosophies, and many more. Even leadership from the human side, which is not very frequently spoken about. So without a further ado, let us welcome Mr. Anthony Heredia.
Thank you, Disha.
Anthony, in one of your past interviews, you've said that life is simple when you are happy with just enough. That's a very unusual statement for somebody who manages billions to say. I would want to know the story behind the experience or the story behind this particular statement.
So there's no story. It's probably me as a person. Most people would believe that there's a lot of spirituality that causes somebody to make a statement like that. But I think for me, it's more philosophical. And I think in some ways it's linked to actually managing money, right? Because even when you're investing, you buy something, you have a point of view on the fact that it is mispriced and it is likely to appreciate. There'll always be a point at which that stops happening. And you have to realize that it is enough. You've probably made double your money and it's time to go. That's one way of looking at it. The second is that, in our business, one of the things that often gets spoken of is risk, right? Because you are in the business of generating returns for customers, but there's always an element of the risk you're willing to take. The way I look at it using this, shall I say, prism of philosophy, is to me, risk is the ability to put your head on the pillow and sleep peacefully.
Correct.
And if you want to sleep peacefully, then to my mind, no amount of money or wealth will ever allow you to close your eyes and sleep on a pillow immediately. It's really a sense of calm, a sense of peace, a sense of happiness. And which is why I kind of always believe that that should be the cornerstone of what you're doing. I mean, there has to be a point at which you feel happy with what you've done and you move on to the next thing. If you start, I would say, measuring everything in financial terms, it becomes complicated. So it's not really a story, it's a philosophy, I would just say. And it's stood me in reasonable state. I've never had to question it. So I kind of think I'll retire also this way.
Wow, that's wonderful. I mean, a lot of people chase the growth, and most importantly, as you grow in your life, that target of achieving starts going further. And I think being grounded with the thought of reaching a point where you're content with what you have makes so much sense, and it kind of gives you so much calm and mental peace. I think that's a great way of looking at it.
I don't want to give your audience the impression that so therefore it's like you're not ambitious enough. I mean, that's not the point. It's just about saying that make your peace with what you've done and move on to the next thing you want to do, and maybe do something more exciting with that, rather than being obsessed with more and more of the same thing, because that will, you'll never reach a point where you'll be happy if that's your obsession.
Absolutely. Great. So moving on, we've heard a lot of people asking CEOs with their strategies, their way of deciding, etc. But nobody really asks for the bookshelf that a CEO follows, or maybe a experience or a learning that has stayed with them, which has actually helped them grow over the years and through their journey of growing. So if I have to ask you, what is one book that you would like to sneak under a new growing CEO's desk? What would be those books?
My reading habit is actually a little unusual. I think from the point I think by the time I was maybe 10 or 11, I have, and that's a long time, I'm quite old now, I have read 4 newspapers at least every day.
Wow.
If I have to, there are times when you leave for an early morning flight, I feel a little inadequate, but fortunately nowadays you can actually, get that online. And so to my mind, that's actually formed a large part of my reading habit. So if you were asking me what would I recommend any young person, leader, or anybody for that matter in terms of more than a book, because I don't, and there'll be lots of more qualified people than me who read books and therefore can really recommend something useful. I actually find, and I tell this to my children as well, right? If you read the newspaper, and I read the newspaper meaning maybe when I was 10 or 11, I read the first page and then the sports page, but now I read every single page.
Wow.
If I just think about it, you referred right at the introduction to EQ and IQ. You could argue that there is a term called common sense. Maybe common sense is even more important than IQ and EQ. And I'll introduce a fourth term, that it pays to be street smart. And you can be street smart when you know what's happening in the world. And you know what's happening in the world when you read the news. Right? So I tend to read 4 papers before I leave for office in the morning. By the time I'm done in the night, I probably read another 5 or 6. So that's my kind of reading habit. I read a lot of newspapers.
That's wonderful.
And not only Indian. I mean, I can tell you, I read the Guardian, I read the Times in the UK, I look at what's on the headlines on CNN. I mean, that's my big go-to.
So I would be right in saying that you are on the top of every news around the world all the time?
No, not so much. I don't think so. I think it's because I'll tell you what, in my day-to-day job, which involves meeting a lot of clients and talking, see, if you've read a lot of things, it's like that old saying, I am jack of all trades, master of none. So I know lots of things about lots of things that are happening in the world. I don't really know enough to be an expert on any of them, but it helps in having a nice, pleasant conversation that is not one-dimensional, right? I mean, I'm meeting a client, it's like the client is like, okay, so he's come to explain to me why I should invest in markets and in his funds today. But if you use your term well-read. I'm not arguing that I'm well-read, but like I said, because I read a lot, it helps me have conversations which are a little more wholesome and fulsome than the average. That's my only reason, because I enjoy it, right? I'm not doing it because it helps my leadership style or my sales technique. It's just that's who I was. I mean, as an 11-year-old, obviously I didn't know what career I would do. It's just that I read 4 papers, then I read 4 papers 40 years later.
Also, because you mentioned that, you've been reading through your childhood, is how I look at it. I also, when I was going through your profile, you were an All India ranker in your
Yes.
chartered
By
accountancy
accident.
journey, right? So I would also want, like, if you today have to advise maybe a aspiring chartered today, what would be one piece of advice that you would want to give that person, not only from the academics point of view, but through their journey onwards?
So honestly, I think I'm one of these strange, people and some of my mentors and seniors back then when I was in articleship and I was studying, there used to be this very strange joke about me that if he passes, he'll get a rank, but whether he'll pass, we don't know. So that is a weird one, right? I mean, the only thing I do remember, because I've never been that academically oriented, to be honest with you, if you look at my grades and marks in BCom, it's not spectacular at all. The one thing I do remember, I probably have done twice in my life, one at the CA Inter and one in the CA final, is I probably never worked as intensely and as hard in those 3 months before the exam as I did at that point. And I think that's the reality about this exam. It's an incredibly tough exam. I mean, nobody should pretend otherwise. You could argue that somebody is a ranker because they're intelligent and all of that. I don't think so. I think, tremendous amount of hard work, and you need God to be smiling. If you have both of that, then you potentially pass and get a rank. Otherwise, no other magic formula.
Yeah,
At least not in my case.
That being a chartered, I would also agree
Yeah.
that 80%, yes, it is hard work, but the 20% of God smiling or the luck factor, it stays.
Yeah. I can tell you, I mean, I am a ranker with both intern and final, a number of papers, which I think I've got like 40 or 41, right? So you know how it is. It could very easily have been a 39.
Sure. So, Anthony, when we look at the LinkedIn profile of a CEO today, it's usually about the highlight reels, the best achievements through their journey. But if I have to ask you about one of the blooper reels in your career and the journey through being CEO at multiple organizations, what would be that one experience that secretly rewired the way you take decisions today or build your teams today? So if I have to, any early on setbacks that has changed you as a person or the way you look at work?
So I wouldn't use the word necessarily bloopers or setbacks, to be honest, in the sense that I can't remember any, but I do remember one or two distinct things that actually happened. I mean, when I was at Morgan Stanley, I was blessed enough to be part of a leadership program that allowed us some brilliant coaching, right? Executive coaching is, to my mind, somewhat underrated. It always helps to have somebody show you a mirror at times, right? And one of the things that came up in terms of, because there's 360-degree feedback, people tell the coach about what they feel. And while there were some nice things, one thing that did come across, which I don't know what's the right word to use, but it's like unexpected realization ki, acha, people think this about me, which is that people thought I sometimes, the right English word for it is procrastinated.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it sometimes took long to do things that they thought I could do much quicker. Sometimes that feels insulting. No. Because I kind of pride myself as, being one of these typical, very aggressive, on the ball people. And I was like very surprised to find that people thought that I dilly-dallied at times. And believe me, it's probably now about 12, 13 years. And this is something the coach said, so I think it's probably because you're not as organized as you should be. And I said, yeah, that's true, because if I think about my personal investing style, etc., quite scatterbrained. And so I started a practice which even to this day is that I actually use my Outlook calendar even to put small things which I have to do, just to make sure that it shows up as a reminder and I actually go about doing it. Rather than taking it for granted that, this will happen. And I think that's something that in my leadership style has been a huge plus over these years. I mean, I think I am a lot more responsive. And I think that's the reason I am a lot more responsive. Had I not had that particular feedback, had I not worked on it, which is, it sounds really stupid to be to give you a context, right? I mean, I remember when you called the first time trying to schedule this and we were discussing prospective dates. Believe you me, the first time we agreed a date, the next thing I did when I put on the phone is open my Outlook calendar and just put that time broadly, ki 2 to 6 I'll block. Right? Now that date didn't happen, but the next time we finally, I still put it. I don't wait for that calendar invite because I just know that I've sorted this out. And to some degree, that's one example. The second is a little strange actually. I'm not exactly sure it's what you would call it, but a couple of years ago, I was actually again in another training program, and this time I had attended a training program after quite a long time. What tends to happen is once you get more senior, people kind of believe you can't get trained, and I'm a huge believer that every day is learning, right?
True.
And I remember that there was a poem that we were asked to read. And it was a beautiful poem. I forget the name of the poem, but there was one line that said that if you genuinely wanted to be true to someone, shouldn't you be telling them the truth even if it's not something that they'd like to hear? And I remember there was a discussion, and weirdly, there were like 15 people in the training program. There was only me, and ironically, the person next to me who had a problem with that line. So people, they had the poem, you had to read it and you had to give feedback. People gave gyan about multiple lines. Only we both had a problem with these two lines. And we were like, no, listen, you've got to be nice. You've got to be a human person. And, that person told us that you should introspect because, maybe this just being a nice guy and getting that reputation is not something that you want to stand for. And quite honestly, I came back, I don't know why, that line haunted me. For the next 3 days, that line haunted me. And I said, is it something I'm guilty of? The fact that I'm not beyond a point willing to call a spade if it will hurt someone. And basically what that poem was trying to say is that in believing that you're not hurting someone by not telling them the truth, you're actually hurting them even more. That's the point it was making. And I think I've become a little bit of a hard-nosed person since that point. I'm being honest. To people, I have been a little more, I would say,
Upfront?
hurtful to them in a sense. I mean, I've called a spade a lot more than I probably would have done before I read those 2 lines on a poem. So again, it's again not necessarily a blooper or stuff, but I would just say, when I think about it in retrospect, I think I should have adopted that a little earlier. It would have been helpful.
This makes so much sense to me because as a team, when I also see, and sometimes I also end up delaying something because I want, so I think, things need to be a little more perfect. Like I would not go ahead with something which is a little imperfect. But now, having this conversation just helps me circle back to that point that I think it's okay, if you're 95% there, but I think going ahead sometimes make more sense than holding something on to. So that makes so much sense, and I'm sure a lot of our audience is going to have a great value out of this insight. So moving on. So now more than, so we've actually got to know a lot about you as a person, as an individual, but we would also like to delve upon the leadership side of you. So if I have to ask you, every industry has sacred cows, okay, which the industry nods to without questioning it ever. But do you have any belief that is on a contrarian view to the industry philosophy, and if you would like to kind of help us understand it a little?
It's not contrary to an industry view, but I think it's kind of related to something we talked about earlier in this conversation. In some sense, my obsession with being happy and not rich. And then when you think about what we do as an industry, it's about managing money for people. Why do you manage money for people? So that they can achieve their goals, etc. And one of the things that it's not a sacred cow, but I think we can do more, at least personally, I try my best and I want to do a lot more, is can we take what we do for a living to someone who can just about afford it? Because my simple philosophy is that, see, we are managing money for sometimes people we meet, they're worth 5 crores, 10 crores, 50 crores, 100 crores. The point is that, yes, professionally, you are adding value to somebody who's worth 50 crores and making them worth 60. But what if you could add value to the person who earns 5 or 10,000 rupees a month, convince them and teach them how to invest the right way? Perhaps for them in their life, that small amount of money which is worth, let's say it will become after 5 years, 10 years, maybe just 1,50,000, 2,50,000. But trust me, I think it makes a dramatic difference in their lives, right? I remember this one incident which is not related to my industry, but I remember our housemate who lived with us. I realized that every time, she was here with us for a long time, I realized every time she went back to the Gao, a lot of our activity was about going and getting the money that was sent to that bank account, right? And I realized it's not that easy because whether it's KYC norms and so on and so forth. So I said, listen, you've been with us many years. Do you really mind if I didn't pay you? And first time she was shocked, like, didn't pay me. I said, see, anyways, I am sending the money to a bank account. You're here for another 8 months. You're not touching that money because you have to go there. Why don't I open a fixed deposit? And she didn't really have the best paperwork in order for me to open an FD in her name in a bank account in Bandra. So I said, I'll open a fixed deposit and I'll invest, and then, you'll get some return. And I remember about 8-9 months back, she was going back and she said, Bhaiya, what about that money? And I'm like, what money? And I could see her face drop, ki boss, this guy has sold me a lemon. And then it struck me, ki, oh yes, I remember I told her, and believe it, because of this procrastination thing I told you, I had penciled it down and I had actually opened an FD for exactly a weird sum of money. And I recollected that this 1,15,000 was that money,
her
and
money.
I could make out that this is the interest that it's going to get. And she was genuinely pleased that firstly she got her money back. That's one nice thing.
True.
But it led me to think that just think about it this way. She made probably 10,000 bucks more in that year, and I just helped her by investing it because that's what I do for a living, right? So to me, that's the sacred cow that we have to bust. That 5 crore unique investors in this industry, but can we bring in 5 crore more people for whom it will genuinely change their lives?
Okay.
Today you're changing people's wealth, but if you change, the lower income people, that's when you will change their life. And I'm not sure that we do enough of it, to be honest.
For the football fans, we would like to know which side would you tilt, Ronaldo or Messi?
Neither. I'm a fan of both. I'm an Arsenal fan, so my favorite all time is Thierry Henry. So I can afford to be nice and say both are. I mean, both are once in a generation, once in many generation talent. So I wouldn't. At the margin, I think because you just look at Messi winning the World Cup last time, slight tilt towards Messi, but I mean both are just outstanding.
Okay. Markets are crashing, phones are ringing, and you don't have the data you would want. Now, in this situation, we would want to know what is happening in your mind. How will you go about the situation and take a call?
So, Disha, there are two things that actually count for a lot in the world of investing, which are not talked about as often. Actually, one word, because the second is actually an adjective that emerges out of that, which is that it's about temperament. And in that sense, given what you just described, it's about then staying calm. If you are able to stay calm, you will end up doing the right thing more often than not. And the ability to stay calm is really down to temperament. So if I was to, for example, switch sport, like people often say, right, I mean, this is a once in a generation talented cricketer. But some of the cricketers that have become greats, you always say that the thing they have is temperament, right? Especially if you think about a test match. So I think in investing as well, I mean, see, it's part of life. You are going to have days where markets are very volatile, crazy things are happening. If you possess a sound temperament, let me use that word sound temperament, you'll be able to deal with it. The second aspect is experience teaches you to have a sound temperament, if that makes any sense. Because when you're young, you're impetuous, and then you make mistakes, and then because your experiences teach you that if I was a little calmer, I wouldn't have done the things I did.
In pressure.
So I would say, as you get more experience, you start to rely more on temperament as opposed to talent, in a sense. I don't know how you would interface it with an investing question that you raised, but I think you can look at so much of the chaos and you can believe that you have the talent to make money where other people are going crazy. But I often find that it's actually your ability to stay calm, that temperament that contributes to it, that allows you to make much more money.
And that also, with that note, I would also like to understand what would be your, if I have to define a almost no moment, where sticking to the processes was hard, but maybe in that moment, because you stuck to the processes, it paid off later. any such instance that you would be able to?
So that's actually pretty much par for the course. It's again down to experience, right? See, ultimately, if you look at, and I mean, we talked about books, and I don't read a lot of them, but I read a lot of articles. See, that nothing, the investing industry is more than 100 years old if you go back to the US, right? I mean, there is nothing to suggest that an investing style or an approach is better than another approach. What really you learn is doing the same approach consistently over time always pays off. Now, if I stay with me for a minute, what that therefore means is that the question you asked, you are going to have times when applying the philosophy or the approach or the process is going to result in very poor results in the short term. But if you stick to the process and you stick to that process and don't do anything differently which is not you, it eventually comes good. So I would give you, there will be many examples throughout an investing career where you just basically say that this is who I am. I mean, if I am crazy about sports, so I tend to give, it's like saying that I was born to bat like Dravid, but it's very obvious to me that this pitch demands me to bat like Sehwag. The fact is, if I decided that I have the ability to bat like Sehwag, I will do it once or twice, eventually I'll crash and burn. So if you're Dravid, bat like Dravid. If you're Sehwag, bat like Sehwag.
So it's basically consistency and staying grounded and not doing things haphazardly.
Just, because there is a way. It's true of any professional, right? I mean, there is a particular way. There's nothing that says that a baseline tennis player is better than a serve and volley player at Wimbledon. There have been great baseline players that have won at Wimbledon. There has been Roger Federer that eventually won at the French Open, right? So the point being that you know what you're good at, you just focus on doing the best you can, eventually it comes good. That to my mind is another version of saying stick to process.
That makes so much sense. And I mean, it just adds so much value when you look at it from the process point of view, from your long game. So again, I think it circles back to where we started from, being slow and steady, but still moving forward makes much more sense than kind of trying to reach somewhere faster or haphazardly being erratic in your way of doing things.
And by the way, I don't want to give the impression that you, there are times you make a change because you realize that you've made an error of judgment. So it's not like that doesn't happen, but I would say those are tactics.
Correct.
Right? Your strategy has to be the same. Tactically, you can make changes.
Makes sense. So 300 plus AUM growth doesn't happen overnight or because of one smart person in the team. It happens actually because there was a team that didn't fall apart under pressure. And how do you build that team? So, when we talk about your journey of last 4 years with Mahindra Manulife and the way the organization has grown 5-folds, 300%, how do you manage the pressure and the team that is actually, pulling their socks up and kind of...
So if you ask me a couple of things. One boils down to experience, in the sense that one of my biggest positives, and I would say in some ways arguably a negative, is that I worked for 30 years. My entire work experience is 30 years. I spent 30 years in the investment management industry. So I sometimes tell people I'm a one-trick pony. मुझे और कुछ आता नहीं है. But therefore, it basically I've seen enough examples in organizations that I have worked in other organizations that I've observed, that if you keep doing the right thing, or more or less the right thing again and again, this industry is we describe it in PPTs as a hockey stick kind of thing. It's a J curve. It's a J curve industry. So this is not an industry where, every month your sales will increase by 10%. Every quarter your investment performance will improve. You just keep doing it, and one day it looks magically amazing. So that's really what we've done, and frankly, we've been very blessed with an industry that has grown significantly at that point. So you just add the three things together. And by the way, I've not even talked about the team to this point, right? I mean, you just think about, we have two promoters who are legendary organizations in general, right? So we are it's a brand that a customer inherently trusts. If a brand that you inherently trust delivers an outcome that is above average pretty much almost every day, or at least that's what we strive to do, and do that in an efficient manner, size will happen. That's the modus operandi that we've worked on, and that's fortunately happened. The team, see, I'm a big believer that the job of a CEO is effectively to sit, read the newspaper, provide direction if they ask it, but usually talented bunch of people. I can go back to a sports analogy, right? I mean, in our business, in tennis Davis Cup, you have a non-playing captain. So you can't go to the tennis court and play.
Yourself.
So ultimately, it's my sales guy who has to need to make the sale. It's the fund manager who has to make the right call on which stock to buy or not to buy, which bond to sell or buy, right? So for me, it's just about giving them the opportunity to express their talent. And you do that so my role is to set up, saying that, and given we're having this conversation in Mumbai, I'll use Mumbai example, right? So my job is, boss, we are playing in Wankhede Stadium. This is not Eden Gardens, so we are playing in Wankhede Stadium. So this is the boundary, this is the playing pitch, these are the playing conditions. Now please go and express your talent, and I will back you, right? And I think that's really what works. And I'm just blessed to have a wonderful bunch of people that I inherited, right? I mean, it's not like my senior team is someone I will say is something which is very unique to me. I have jumped organizations quite a number of times. I have never brought senior talent along with me. I have always believed in working with the senior leadership that existed there, and it's never gone wrong.
That's also very rare in the industry. Like, it's across industries.
Yes.
But that's a very rare, because
No, so I don't come with an entourage. I come with myself, and I just believe that everybody innately has the power to do well, and so I've worked with the same. I remember in my prior organization, when I was leaving, somebody made that comment that in our senior team, you were the last to arrive and you're the first to go. So, which I said, listen, that to me is a compliment. I didn't come in and say, this doesn't work, we should have a new person who does this or that. I worked with and I enjoyed it, and that's what I would say in a summary. You generally, most people tend to be good.
So I would take it as it's more about working around with the people in the room. It also says a lot about being able to gel with the senior leadership and turning around the tables your way. It also kind of leads to. And
I'll just take 1 minute, not even 1 minute, just 20 seconds more. It's very important to me that I keep enforcing the message that it's about everybody. So senior leadership to theek hai, but to me, every single person, including the person who ensures that the chai and coffee exists, is critical to success. Right? That's my modus operandi.
Okay. Now let's talk about the robot in the room, AI.
Yes.
Do you genuinely feel that an algorithm will manage the funds going forward way better than a human ever could, or you would still incline towards the human side of being able to manage fund? I mean, is there something about investing, to your mind, that requires a human touch, or?
See, I'm reasonably convinced that you will always have a bunch of humans that are able to. There is a very famous, I think it's Lord Keynes has this very famous quote on markets, which is a very relevant quote, which says that markets will remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. That's the quote. If you assume that quote to be absolutely accurate, which I think it is, it means markets will remain irrational, right? Therefore, anybody who attempts to do stuff only rationally, which is what AI will do. It is a rational, logical thinker. Will not necessarily always succeed in an environment that is irrational at times, right? Having said that, there is another cliche that is very popular doing the rounds, that people who do not use AI will be gobbled up by people who use AI. And I think that's true. So we already in our firm started to use, and I think we'll increasingly use AI. I think it will give us an edge. As a human being, it will give you an edge to do certain things in terms of making decisions. That's for certain. So if you ask me, 5 years ago, you probably relied only on your own innate ability, less on technology, if I was to just use a broader term. 5 years from now, or even today, if you completely believe it's about you, and there is no way a technology tool, including AI, can help you be better, then I think you're fooling yourself.
So I would say that the algorithm will be able to improve your efficiency, but there will be a human touch required to kind of.
If I was to just take, no, in our case, it's not just efficiency, right? In our case, ultimately, it's about you have to keep making decisions every day. Whether this is a company worth buying, not buying, should I sell this? I think it has a huge role in helping you get more insights than you were otherwise. And it kind of becomes very personalized. See, to give you a context, right? I mean, then these are AI tools that we currently use. If I buy a company stock or I buy a sector because I think these are one or two key aspects. There may be a general report with general insights, but there are one or two things that are very core to me. If I have an AI tool, it will have the ability to bring those particular insights to me in real time, allowing me to make that decision when it needs to be made. Right? Which is, to that extent, I think, the power of AI. So I'm not ruling it out, but you're not going to have a fund run by a AI tool outperform a fund run by a human using AI sustainably over a period of time.
Fair enough. If we fast forward to 2040, India is supposedly a developed country by now. If I have to ask you to bet down on a certain scripts, then what would be that bet on? It could be an industry, it could be a script.
No, so in fact, we've been on record. When a country moves from developing to developed, it's impossible to believe that there is no possibility of prosperity for everybody. It is actually a very unique period in the history of a country when it moves there. So I don't think we would be well served by trying to pick sectors that are likely to be winners over the next 15 years versus others. In every sector, there will be winners, there will be losers. That's at least the way we like to frame our thinking. Having said that, if I was to just nuance it a little bit, I think 2000 to 2025, you've seen services as part of our economy be the big driver to the overall growth. I think in the next 10 years, you will see that happening in manufacturing. So I think Indian manufacturing will come of age in the next 10 to 15 years. And I think that may mean there are subsectors that are larger opportunities than average. That's what I would say. But it would be, I don't think this is a time to say, I don't like consumption, I like manufacturing, I don't like manufacturing, I like financial services. I think in financial services, there will be winners, there will be people who don't win. The other observation I will just say, and we'll have to just, whether this plays out, in the last 2-3 years, one of the things we've observed is the reward for winners is disproportionately larger than the reward for people who don't win. Which then means that within a particular sector, assuming the playing field, I believe all sectors have the ability to do well. But if I have the ability to start to predict some of the winners, I should back that strongly, because the way markets have been in the last 3-4 years, winners are being rewarded with 2 gold medals instead of 1. So it kind of pays to try to spot the winners earlier is what I would say will be the strategy.
Sure. If a regular corporate CEO enrolled in a portfolio management one-on-one course led by you, what would be the one piece of advice you would give him for the next decades of Indian growth?
I think again it goes down to the original premise, right? EQ. I think stay invested, stay diversified, be patient. That's it. Nothing else. I mean, so can I give you a corny answer as well?
Sure, sure.
That I sometimes use in conversations with prospective customers or in large audiences. I am about to tell you the magic ingredient to make a lot of money from equity markets, and people are like, what is it? And I said, it's only one word, and that word is Samay. And that's true. Honestly, you can buy the most average thing, but if you give it time, and it's very challenging, it's very easy to say it. Trust me, if you look back, Disha, personally at your portfolio that you would have invested in, if I asked you to name an investment you have held for 15 years, you'll struggle. If I asked you to name investments you have done in the last 3-6 months, you'll keep rattling, हाँ मैंने ये खरीदा था, मैंने ये बेच दिया. But boring things like ये 15 साल पहले मैंने लिया था doesn't come very naturally.
True.
So that's why I said Samay is the secret ingredient. I will tell the CEO in the room, the common person on the street, everybody के लिए only magic ingredient is Samay. So anybody who has their ability to give time to an investment decision will reap the rewards.
You've grown this business fast enough with a lot of this thing. How do you see a succession plan? Have you already started looking for a successor within the team? So by successor, I mean somebody who would be able to continue the show the way you have run the organization.
Very easy, because like I said, I mean, my style is is setting the boundary, deciding the stadium, listing down the playing conditions, and saying जाके batting करो, जाके bowling करो. So as long as the playing conditions, all of that are pretty much set by process, etc., they will keep batting and they'll keep bowling long after I've gone. So I remember this incident happened in 1997. Okay, this is 2 years into my first job. My then boss had resigned to move overseas. This is part of his farewell speech, which still I remember. He said that my true legacy is going to be the amount of time you guys don't ever miss me. And we were like, what do you mean? And he was a very successful corporate executive. He said, listen, if I left and next month people are like, oh, I wish he was around, how would he have handled it? He said, it means I would have failed. But if I have genuinely walked out of the door and nobody misses me for a moment, at least professionally, that's when I've done my job. And that stuck with me. So that's why I don't worry too much about succession, because I'm pretty convinced that the team has easily what it takes to carry on the story.
Okay. Now moving on, we've had a couple of questions selected. It is going to be a quick rapid fire round, and we want you to answer very candidly without really analyzing the questions.
No problem.
So should we start?
Yes.
If 25-year-old Anthony walked into your office tomorrow asking for a career advice, what's the one thing you'd tell him?
Try to focus on work-life balance a little more.
Okay. CEOs aren't exactly famous for admitting they worry about things. What is that one thing that has been keeping you up till 2 a.m. in the night?
Maybe perfectly candid, my children. I think after a point you stop, you don't think about your own career and what you will achieve. I think for those in the room that have kids, they'll know what I'm talking about. After a point, your entire life and ambitions and whatever it is, that's what I worry about. I don't worry about कि मेरा career के बाद क्या होगा and stuff. It's really more about, really excited about what my kids can do.
Okay. If you had to bet on one skill that's criminally underrated for the next generation CEOs, something nobody's teaching in business school, that would be?
I'm going to answer with a very technical term, so since it's rapid fire, it may not make much sense. But I think capital allocation. It's a very investment person's answer to this. But you have this much. You have $100. India is an amazing country. So much opportunity in the next 15 years. You have to be careful about where you're going to allocate the $100. And that is a term that is less appreciated, I think, in Indian corporate world or broadly. CEOs who have the ability to do great capital allocation is a rare breed in my view.
Okay. Test cricket or T20?
You're asking me cricket questions. I would probably say Test cricket.
Okay.
I mean, just you're saying why? Because I guess temperament, if you think about, for me, how dear I hold temperament. I mean, I think Test cricket is, I'm hoping by now the Indian women would have beaten England in the one-off test match.
Sure.
So for me, those are outstanding things.
Okay. Book or a podcast?
Podcast, 100%.
Mumbai or a Singapore?
Can I answer it differently? My favorite cities are Mumbai, Hong Kong, New York, because they're all very similar, very lively, very chaotic. So for me, Mumbai over Singapore, 100%.
Okay. Best investment you ever made which had nothing to do with money?
Actually, it's the first set of ESOPs I got, which is about 15, 17 years ago, which I did nothing about. And fortunately, they're overseas stocks, so obviously the dollar has done well. The companies continue to do well. So by mistake, I gave it the magic ingredient, which is Samay.
Very well said. One word for this market?
Opportunity.
Anthony, this has been a master class, and I'm sure a lot of our
Thank you.
audience are going to get a lot of insights from this.
Thank
you so much for your time.
No.
And
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
it was an honor and a pleasure interviewing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.